The unexpected withdrawal. Director Keth Valos arranged his ceremonial crystals with practiced precision as the great assembly hall of Harmony Prime filled with the gentle hum of 200 different species finding their seats. The massive circular chamber stretched nearly a kilometer across, its bioluminescent walls pulsing softly with the rhythm of the station's heartbeat. Each species had their designated section, arranged in careful harmony according to ancient protocols that had kept peace for 37 years. The human section occupied a modest space near the outer ring, nothing that would draw attention. Captain Sarah Chen sat alone in the simple gray uniform that humans always wore to these gatherings. No decorative elements, no status symbols, no attempts to impress. Keth had always appreciated that about humans. They understood their place in the greater cosmic order, never overreaching or demanding more than their fair share of influence. The morning session bell resonated through the chamber with its deep musical tone that touched frequencies every species could hear. Keth rose from his crystalline chair, his forearms spreading wide in the traditional gesture of welcome. His people, the Zatari, had been chosen to lead the council precisely because of their natural diplomatic abilities and their perfect memory for protocol. The Galactic Council recognizes the beginning of session 14,247, Keth announced, his voice carrying clearly through the translation matrices that surrounded each delegation. Today's agenda includes the Kandari-Threxian border negotiations, the resource allocation for the Outer Rim colonies, and the quarterly trade regulation review. The session progressed with its usual measured pace. The Kandari delegation, tall and fierce-looking with their scaled skin and razor-sharp crests, argued passionately about mining rights in the Soyuz spotted Zirion system. The Threxians, small and quick with their large compound eyes, countered with claims based on their ancient exploration records. It was an old argument, one that flared up every few months like clockwork. Keth was preparing to call for the human mediators when Captain Chen stood up. This was unusual. Humans rarely spoke unless asked, and they were never scheduled for today's session. The hall fell silent as every eye, sensor, and electromagnetic field detector focused on the solitary human figure. "Director Valos," Sarah said, her voice steady and clear. "I request permission to address the assembly." "Permission granted, Captain Chen." Keth felt a flutter of curiosity. In 3 decades of human participation, they had never made an unscheduled address. Sarah Chen stepped forward to the speaker's circle at the center of the hall. She looked small, surrounded by the towering architecture and the watching multitude of alien forms. When she spoke, her words were precise and carefully chosen. "Honored delegates, representatives of the Galactic Council, I stand before you today as the final voice of humanity in these chambers." She paused, letting the translation matrices catch up to her meaning. "Effective immediately, the Human Federation is withdrawing from the Galactic Council. All treaties, trade agreements, and cooperative ventures are hereby terminated." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the station's heartbeat seemed to pause. Keth felt his crystalline structure vibrate with shock, a sensation he had not experienced in over a century of diplomatic service. Then the chamber erupted. Delegates leaped to their feet, shouting questions in dozens of languages. The Kandari roared their confusion while the Threxians chittered in rapid, high-pitched bursts. The massive Gorian representatives' tentacles writhed with agitation, and the Etheria. Ulvelani began to glow with distress patterns. Keth struck his resonance staff against the central platform, sending out waves of sound that demanded attention. Slowly, the chaos subsided. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice carrying undertones of genuine confusion. "Surely there has been some misunderstanding. Has humanity been threatened? Have we failed you in some way? These matters can be discussed. Solutions can be found." Sarah shook her head. "There is no threat, Director. No failure on your part. This is simply our decision. We have concluded that our philosophical approaches to galactic civilization have diverged too far from the Council's direction." Commander Rax Thurion of the Kandari military stood, his impressive height casting shadows across several smaller delegations. Captain, the Kandari have fought beside humans in 3 border conflicts. We have shared victory and loss. What philosophical differences could possibly justify abandoning your allies? We are not abandoning anyone, Commander, Sarah replied. We are simply choosing a different path. Dr. Nira Soleth, the chief representative of the Velani Science Council, materialized in her section with the soft glow that marked her species' form of urgent communication. Captain Chen, humanity's contributions to galactic science have been invaluable. Your people's practical solutions to complex problems have saved countless lives. Surely we can resolve whatever concerns you have. Our contributions will be remembered, Sarah said, but our participation ends today. The questions came faster now, a torrent of confusion and disbelief. Humans had been part of the council for 37 years. They were reliable, helpful, and modest in their demands. They mediated disputes, solved technical problems, and maintained the complex systems that kept galactic civilization functioning smoothly. They were not dramatic or impulsive. They did not make sudden, unexplained decisions. Yet here was their representative, calmly announcing the end of everything. But the Zarian mining dispute, Calais, out Delegate Fenn of the Threxian Collective. Your engineers were scheduled to survey the system next month. Who will handle the technical assessment? I am sure you will find other qualified engineers, Sarah said. The trade route through the nebular reach, shouted Representative Kwan of the Merchant Guild. Human pilots are the only ones who can navigate those electromagnetic storms safely. Other species will learn, Sarah replied. Keth felt a growing sense of unease. Each question revealed another area where humans played a crucial role. When had they become so integral to galactic operations? Captain, he said, at least allow us time to prepare for your departure. Surely a transition period would be beneficial for all parties. The transition began an hour ago, Sarah said simply. Human personnel are being recalled from all non-human territories. Our facilities are being shut down or transferred to local authorities. All human vessels will depart for Earth space within the next 72 hours. The finality in her voice sent a chill through the assembly. This was not a negotiating position or a dramatic gesture. It was a statement of fact. Dr. Soleth's glow intensified. Captain, this is unprecedented. In the entire history of the Council, no member species has ever withdrawn completely. There are procedures, protocols, legal frameworks that must be observed. All legal obligations will be fulfilled, Sarah said. Compensation for broken contracts is being processed through your standard banking networks. Property transfers are being filed with the appropriate authorities. We are not breaking our word, Doctor. We are simply ending our participation. She turned to address the entire assembly. The Human Federation thanks the Galactic Council for 37 years of cooperation. We wish you all success in your future endeavors. Without another word, RD. Sarah Chen walked toward the exit. The chamber remained stunned into silence as she passed between the towering delegations. At the great doors, she paused and turned back. Director Valos, she called across the vast space. For what it is worth, working with all of you has been the greatest honor of our species' existence. Then she was gone. The assembly sat in stunned silence for nearly a full minute before the chaos began again. This time, however, the shouting had a different quality. It was not confusion or protest. It was the sound of 200 species slowly realizing that something fundamental had just changed, and none of them understood what it meant. Keth struck his resonance staff repeatedly, but order was slow to return. When it finally did, the questions came in a more organized fashion, but no less urgently. How much of our trade infrastructure depends on human companies? Asked the Merchant Guild representative. What percentage of our technical systems use human-designed components? Demanded the Engineering Council delegate. Which diplomatic processes require human mediation? Called out the Kandari commander. As the questions mounted, Keth began to realize that nobody had complete answers. Humans had been so quietly efficient, so modestly helpful, that their contributions had become invisible. They solved problems before they became crises. They maintained systems without fanfare. They mediated disputes so smoothly that other species barely noticed their involvement. The session continued for 6 more hours as delegates frantically contacted their home governments and tried to assess the impact of humanity's withdrawal. The reports that came back were troubling. The Kandari military discovered that their communication networks used human-designed encryption protocols. The Threxian merchant fleet realized that their navigation systems relied on human-maintained satellites. The Velani research stations found that their most critical experiments used human-built instruments. As the day wore on, the scope of humanity's quiet integration into galactic civilization became clear. They were not just participants in the council, they were woven into the very fabric of how 200 species lived and worked together. And now they were gone. The unraveling begins. 3 days after Captain Sarah Chen walked out of the Galactic Council chambers, the first systems began to fail. Commander Rax Thurian stood in the command center of the Kandari military complex on Fortress Prime, watching displays that should have shown the positions of every ship in the sector. Instead, half the screens displayed error messages in human script that none of his technicians could read. "Status report," he growled to his communications officer, a young Kandari named Vex whose crest was trembling with nervous energy. "Sir, we have lost contact with 60% of our patrol fleet. The long-range communication array went offline 2 hours ago. Our technicians say the system is operational, but it will not connect to the network." Rax's own crest flattened against his skull in frustration. "What network?" "The human-maintained relay network, sir. Without their satellites, our signals cannot reach beyond the local system." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out with increasing frequency. Dr. Nira Soleth materialized in her laboratory on the Velani research world of Luminos, her usually calm luminescence flickering with agitation. The massive particle accelerator that was the centerpiece of her dark matter research had shut down completely. "Status?" she projected to her research team. "The control systems are unresponsive," came the reply from Dr. Vell, her chief assistant. "The human-designed quantum processors appear to be entering some kind of protected mode. We cannot access any of the primary functions." Nira's glow dimmed as she processed this information. The accelerator had cost her government 3 billion standard credits and taken 12 years to build. Now it was an inert mountain of metal and crystalline components. "Have we tried the backup systems?" "There are no backup systems. The humans said their design was so reliable that redundancy was unnecessary." Meanwhile, in the bustling trade stations of the Inner Rim, Merchant Guild Representative Quan faced a different crisis. The automated cargo handling systems that processed thousands of tons of goods daily had begun making inexplicable errors. Ships were being loaded with the wrong materials, sent to incorrect destinations, or left waiting for clearances that never came. "It is the sorting algorithms," explained Chief Engineer Brandt, a stocky member of the Dwarven Collective whose people were renowned for their technical expertise. "They are written in human code. Without their maintenance servers, the programs are degrading." Quan's multiple arms gestured in the complex patterns that indicated extreme stress among his people. "How long before complete failure?" "Days, maybe hours. The cascade errors are accelerating." Director Keth Valos sat in his private office aboard Harmony Prime, reviewing reports that painted an increasingly grim picture. The Xerion system mining operation had suffered a catastrophic life support failure that killed 47 workers. The atmospheric processors had been designed and maintained by human engineers. Without their oversight, a simple malfunction had become a disaster. The Nebular Reach, the crucial trade route that connected the Inner Rim to the resource-rich outer territories, was now completely impassable. Human pilots had been the only ones capable of navigating the intense electromagnetic storms that filled the region. Several non-human crews had tried to make the passage using standard navigation techniques. None had returned. But perhaps most disturbing were the reports from the intelligence services. Director Keth's old friend, Master Analyst Jareth of the Seeker Guild, had requested a private meeting. The Seeker Guild specialized in information gathering and analysis across the galaxy, and their reputation for accuracy was unmatched. "Keth," Jareth said as he settled into the specially designed chair in the director's office, "we have a problem that goes far deeper than system failures and broken trade routes." Jareth activated a holographic display that filled half the room. It showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with thousands of data points highlighted in various colors. "What am I looking at?" Keth asked. "Human involvement in galactic civilization over the past 37 years, Jareth replied. "The red points are human-designed systems, the blue points are human-mediated agreements, the green points are human-staffed facilities, and the yellow points are processes that require human oversight." Keth stared at the display in growing horror. The galaxy was painted in a rainbow of human influence. There were very few star systems that did not show multiple colored indicators. "This cannot be accurate," he said. "I verified it 3 times, Jareth assured him. "Humans were not just participants in our civilization, Keth. They were its foundation. Look at this." He zoomed in on a section showing the core worlds. 78% of inter-system communication relies on human protocols. 65% of all trade agreements include human mediation clauses. 91% of complex technical systems use human components or software. How did we not notice this? Because they made sure we did not notice. Every time humans solved a problem or created a system, they presented it as a joint effort or as an obvious solution that anyone could have developed. They never took credit, never drew attention to their contributions. Jareth changed the display to show a timeline. "Look at this pattern. Every time tension arose between species, humans would appear with a solution. Every time a technical challenge seemed insurmountable, human engineers would find a breakthrough. Every time trade disputes threatened to escalate to conflict, human mediators would craft agreements that satisfied all parties. They were protecting us," Keth realized. "All this time they were protecting us from ourselves." "And now they are gone," Jareth said grimly. "Within the first week, we have already seen the Kandari-Threxian border dispute escalate to military posturing. The Mining Guild and the Transport Union are threatening to end their cooperation agreements. 3 separate trade wars have started in the Outer Rim." The scope of the crisis became clearer each day. Without human maintenance, the great orbital cities began experiencing power fluctuations. Without human logistics, food shipments were delayed or lost entirely. Without human mediation, old grudges and rivalries that had been peacefully managed for decades suddenly flared into open hostility. But the most disturbing development came from the deep space monitoring stations. Dr. Nira Soleth had managed to restore partial function to one of her research facilities and was conducting routine scans of nearby space when she detected something unprecedented. "Director Valos," her message began, "you need to see this immediately." The holographic communication showed Dr. Soleth in her laboratory, her natural luminescence flickering with what Keth recognized as extreme agitation. "We have detected the massive energy signatures from the direction of Earth's solar system," she continued. "The readings are unlike anything in our databases. The power output appears to be equivalent to the energy consumption of an entire galactic sector." "Could your instruments be malfunctioning?" Keth asked. "I thought so at first, but we have confirmed the readings from multiple sources. Director, whatever the humans are doing, it requires more energy than our entire civilization uses in a year." The implications were staggering. Humans had always appeared to be a modestly advanced species, roughly equivalent to dozens of others in the galaxy. Their technology was solid but not spectacular. Their ships were functional but not impressive, and their weapons were adequate but not superior. Yet now they were generating energy signatures that dwarfed anything in known space. "There is something else," Dr. Soleth added. "We attempted to send a probe to investigate. The probe was destroyed the moment it entered what we believe to be the outer boundary of human-controlled space." "Destroyed how?" "We do not know. There was no explosion, no weapon signature, no debris. One moment the probe was transmitting data, the next moment it simply ceased to exist." Commander Rax Thurion had been having similar experiences. His military intelligence division had dispatched 3 separate reconnaissance missions to the edges of human territory. None had returned. The ships had not been destroyed in any conventional sense. They had simply vanished without trace or explanation. "It is as if space itself is rejecting our presence," reported Captain Thane, one of Rax's most experienced officers. "Our ships approach the boundary of human space and then nothing. No distress signals, no final communications, no wreckage. They are just gone." The pattern was consistent across the galaxy. Any attempt to make contact with human territory or human personnel met with complete failure. It was as if humanity had erected an impenetrable barrier around their space, one that operated on principles no other species understood. As the second week of humanity's absence began, the Galactic Council faced a crisis unlike any in its history. Critical systems were failing across the galaxy, old conflicts were resurging with dangerous intensity, and their attempts to understand or contact the humans met with mysterious failure. Director Keth Valos called an emergency session of the council, but when he looked out at the assembly hall, he saw something that chilled him to his crystalline core. Nearly half the seats were empty. Species that had been reliable participants for decades had recalled their representatives to deal with crises at home. The great chamber that had once hummed with the conversations of 200 different civilizations now echoed with the voices of barely 100 delegates. The age of galactic cooperation was ending, and none of them understood why the humans had chosen to let it die. More troubling still, none of them had any idea how to survive without the quiet guardians who had held their civilization together for nearly 4 decades. As Keth prepared to address the diminished assembly, he could not shake the feeling that humanity's withdrawal was not just the end of their participation in galactic affairs. It was the beginning of something far more significant and far more dangerous than any of them could imagine.